If you love what we do, then please consider supporting CryptFail on Patreon. Your support helps us grow and to create more content more often. And now, on with the show.
The winds have been getting steadily colder. Snow has not fallen the last few days, but it is cold enough that it remains on the ground still. The road has been easy going with no difficult terrain. As the afternoon moves towards night, a waypoint inn can be seen in the distance. These lonely buildings offering refuge at the end of a day's journey.
Daisuke's off hunting for rabbit or pheasant, okay, as is the case during the day. He hunts with his bow, and Rin, quite often she will walk leading her horse and walking with Chiaki. And you hear her beside you from Rin as she's points to the inn down the road.
Well, that's good. It appears we have somewhere to stay for the night.
And she nods. And she looks a little bit pleased, having had spent, I guess we've spent a few nights on the road, especially walking is a lot slower than going by horse. Once we reach the inn, Rin will tie Amaya up outside. Obviously, they would probably have a pole to tether horses to.
The tavern is built just off the main road. It is two buildings. The larger one is quite possibly the tavern, and a smaller one that is connected to it at the rear, which could be for the staff and owners. The sounds of happy, friendly people are echoing out the front door, and the smell of rice and fish is on the air.
Chiaki will look slightly hesitantly at Rin and say, it does seem to be rather crowded.
Rin sighs. Rin looks at... Rin turns and looks at Chiaki. She cocks her head to one side, with her hair falls down. Slides down over the one side of her face as she's cocked it at a pretty weird angle, and she signs to Chiaki, asking if she is okay.
Oh, yes. Should we go in or wait for Daisuke to return?
After she sort of straightens up and makes sure that the tether is tight on the pole, and she turns, Rin turns back to Chiaki and sort of shakes her right hand in front of her chest and points at both shoulders, suggesting that she's tired.
All right, I suppose we'd better go and ask for a room.
Rin, with her right hand, does a sort of knocking motion. Agreeing.
And Chiaki will wait to
And
see
she
if
nods.
she's going to go in first.
And she looks back at Chiaki, quickly walks up the stairs to the door,
And Chiaki will follow after her.
and she slides off her sandals and steps through the door and looks around sheepishly.
Within, about 15 people are seated, a mix of peasants and a few of the merchant class, dressed in slightly better kimonos. They are happily chatting amongst themselves, and none pay much attention to you.
Are you more tired or more hungry?
Rin will make her way to the one that's closest to the door.
Yep. Chiaki will make her way over to that table as well.
Pull out the cushion and kneel.
And Chiaki will kneel across from her.
So Rin's just sitting there quietly with her hands almost interlocked, just resting on her legs. And she's just looking down at the table.
A young girl, she's about 12 or 13. She's wearing a nice but faded kimono, and she runs over. Her hair is jet black, and she bows quick and low, and then pops up with a smile on her face. Welcome, hello, how can I help you?
Could we please have some food? I'm not sure what you have. Anything without fish is fine.
Yes, we have chicken.
Thank you.
Nods as she's looking at Chiaki.
And Chiaki will look back at her in case she needs to add anything that Chiaki
Oh,
herself
she
has
shakes her head.
forgotten. Yes, that's everything for now. Thank you.
Very good. She bows and then hurries off to the kitchen to place your order.
Daisuke successfully hunts down a rabbit, but on his second shot, his bowstring snaps right in the middle, and he doesn't have another bowstring, so he will have to have one made up.
It's around 10 minutes later that the girl comes back. She's carrying the food that you ordered, and she places it neatly and carefully onto the table, and then she steps back. Is there anything else that I can get you?
I don't believe so at the moment. We would also like to ask for a room here tonight if we could.
Yes, that is very possible.
Thank you.
And she bows and withdraws, leaving you to your food.
Chiaki's going to wait and see what Rin does about the food, knowing that she can be particular and not wishing to do anything wrong.
Okay, so Rin looks a little bit perturbed. Rin carefully assigns the plates, dishes out equal portions of the meal. As hungry as she is, she's still eating with a lot of grace. Just as you finish eating, Daisuke turns up at the front door, looking inside, and he has a rabbit a skinned rabbit in one hand, and his bow with a missing bowstring in the other. And he looks a little bit disheveled, and only because he lifts up his bow and looks at the damaged bowstring that's attached to it. He walks over to the table with you two, noticing he sort of His eyes light up as soon as he sees you two sitting there quietly, having just finished your meal. I see you both have already eaten. He looks down,
I
holding up
do
his rabbit.
apologize. You were not here, but we can certainly request more food.
He looks down at his rabbit, looks at the empty bowls, looks over towards... Yeah, Rin looks up at the young girl.
And she holds her hand up to acknowledge you, and then a few seconds later, she runs over.
And Daisuke turns to the girl, holds out the rabbit. Would you be able to cook this for me, please?
Yes. Hi.
Arigato. And he bows and sits down at the table next to Rin.
And she bows and she takes it, and then she runs back to the kitchen. Hey, samurai bring their own food.
Yeah.
A little while later, the girl returns. She has a platter of rice, and upon it, looking like it was cooked on a spit, is the rabbit. And she places it carefully onto the table.
Daisuke sort of nods, and he goes to grab the bowl of rice. All of a sudden, his left hand gets smacked out of the way. He turns to Rin, and then a sudden realization dawns on his face that he's obviously gotten ahead of himself. Being so hungry, he had forgotten that Rin likes to make sure that everything's prepared the right way. Rin assigns him a bowl with some chopsticks and serves up a portion and looks up at Chiaki and back down at the rabbit.
I'm fine, thank you.
She looks back up at Chiaki again, raised eyebrow.
Do I assume this is indicating incredulity or
Yes, well...
Well, here's the thing. Everyone else has seemingly been rather famished. Chiaki hasn't seemed particularly all that hungry.
She cuts herself off some rabbit and helps herself to a little bit of extra rice. She sits there waiting, and Daisuke sits there waiting, and you can almost feel his back foot hitting the floor from it tapping. And you can sort of hear it, and then she starts eating it, and then Daisuke, and he starts eating. That is good rabbit. Are we staying here tonight?
Yes.
Place seems safe enough.
I don't think there are any other inns nearby, anyway. Rin is very tired, and so we have asked for a room.
Very good. Good to sleep inside for a change. And I guess we haven't eaten that much over the last couple of days. So we're just staying the night?
I believe so, unless you know of another reason to stay longer.
Well, we have been walking for, 3 days? My feet could use a bit of a rest.
Chiaki is going to head to bed, if nothing else is going on, because she's already eaten, and we've already got a room, so she's just going to go to sleep.
And morning arrives uneventfully. The main room is quieter than the night before.
And Chiaki would also wake up and probably go see about getting some food.
A few of the patrons have gotten up early, and they are dressed in their travelling clothes, and some have the wicker baskets that are tied to their backs, carrying their belongings. A large Ronin walks up. He is dressed in blue hakama and a dusty top. He sits carefully. He is tall, a little over 6 feet, and he smiles at Chiaki as he leans back. I am Jinosuke, a bounty hunter of no small repute in this region.
Pleasure to meet you. I came here to get some breakfast and I have no idea what's happening and where are Rin and Daisuke. I don't know how to deal with this.
You and your companions look capable, useful, despite your young age. I could use your help. There is a local matter.
I see. What is it that you require help with?
I have been tracking bandits along the main road. They have been preying on weak travellers, those that they can take, and they have not been gentle about it. They've now taken refuge in a monastery about 3 kilometres from here. I am willing to split the bounty. The leader is mine, but their men are yours. And if money is not to your particular liking, they have been cruel and violent. You will be righting a wrong if that is more to your treasury than the sound of coin.
I see. I would need to ask my companions for their opinion as well, although I am certainly not opposed to assisting.
Of course, of course. It is only prudent of you to do so.
And she's still sitting there like, please, will they show up soon? Somebody, anybody. I don't know what to say to this man.
After a little while, Rin appears from the room and shuffles over towards the table where Chiaki's sitting at, and passes the Ronin.
Chiaki has a simultaneously sort of relieved and pleading glance towards Rin, and then she will say, this is my companion, Saito-san. Saito-san, our assistance has been requested in a matter to do with some bandits.
Rin signs bandits, as in question.
Yes. They have apparently taken shelter in a temple. You said it was 3 kilometers from here?
It's been there for as long as anyone can remember. The abbot might even be the same one, ancient though he must be. I'm not entirely sure why they would have chosen there to hold up. The monks aren't exactly the most exciting of people. No sex, no sake, no women, no fun, no sin. No wonder it's dark. But there they are. And I fear that when they are done and go to move on, they will follow their usual tactic, and that will be to murder everyone in that place. And as truly boring as these monks are, they don't deserve that.
Yes. Jinosuke-san here says that the bandits are particularly violent and have been causing trouble for travelers on the road.
Turns back to Chiaki, and then she signs payment.
Yes. So, please correct me if I am wrong, but you said you only wished to collect the bounty on the bandits' leader, and if we so wished, we would collect the bounty on the others?
That is correct. The area magistrate has placed 2 bounties. One for the gang and one for their leader. This is not uncommon practice.
Rin appears okay. She looks up at the serving girl.
And she runs over.
At about this time, Daisuke comes back into the inn. He notices the Ronin and turns to Chiaki. Oh, I see you've made a friend.
Daisuke, this is Jinosuke-san, who is requesting our help with a matter involving some bandits.
And Daisuke looks a little bit concerned as he sits down, kneels down at the table. Bandits, it is a pleasure to make your acquaintance, Jinosuke-san. And he bows.
If we can bring these bandits down, the pleasure will be all mine, Samurai-san.
There is a bounty for the bandits, and we would be... Well, there are 2 bounties. There is one for the leader of the bandits and one for the others, and we would collect the one for the others.
Oh. So you have the bounties on you?
He reaches into his robe and he pulls out a folded piece of parchment. It looks like it's been definitely carried for a little while, and he unfolds it, and it shows the bounties listed.
And Rin's looking at the papers, and Daisuke notices, and he hands Rin the papers, and she gracefully takes them, and she reads over them. She rolls them back up and hands them to the Ronin, and she nods.
Would this arrangement be acceptable to the 2 of you?
I do believe Rin has already agreed to the terms.
And he turns and raises his hand, and the girl runs over. Yes, how can I help you? In my room there is a brown bag. Please go fetch it for me.
Yes, unfortunately, I was hunting yesterday for our dinner, and my last bowstring snapped.
And she comes back and she's got a small bag, and he takes it and he rummages through and he pulls out a small, it looks like string, but it's not string, and it's all wrapped up. And he hands it over. Will that work?
And Daisuke looks at it. Yes, how much?
Fine. If it means we can do this job.
Very good. Well, it will mean that I'll be able to help you at the very least. So, did you have a plan?
And he points. We go about 3 kilometers in that direction. And when we get there, anyone who is not wearing a monk's robe, we kill. Pretty straightforward plan, really.
Couldn't the bandits have also put on monk robes? Can't say as I have much experience with monks.
There is a tree line that ends about 100 meters from the monastery. If we are careful and quiet, we should be able to get reasonably close before there is any detection. And if we are very lucky, we can keep surprise.
And when did you want to head out?
I would say sooner rather than later. Right now they're holed up and eating the temple's food. But once that runs out, then the situation will change.
Well, these bandits do sound unscrupulous, I have to say. It would be benefit for us to remove them from society.
We should help.
And he glances over at the innkeeper's daughter who's standing in the corner. While I am primarily doing this for the money, I am sure the people here will appreciate the removal of these miscreants.
Well, yes. Well, I was thinking on a practical sense that...
Are we leaving now or later?
I do believe we have not had breakfast yet. It's probably not advisable to go and swordplay on an empty stomach.
There is a call from the kitchen, and the innkeeper's daughter runs there. A couple of minutes later, she comes over to your table bringing several plates of food.
Daisuke is looking at the plates and looking up at the Ronin. And he sort of holds up his hand to the Ronin. Rin takes the plates and sets one out for each person.
When Rin is not looking at him, He looks up at Chiaki and mouths the word crane.
Correct.
And she's paused halfway in the middle of, setting out a cup. And she looks down back at the cup again as if you interrupted her process. And then she continues. And after probably, a good 10 minutes, everything is ready. Food, dinner, breakfast has been served. And after he finishes his meal, with your leave, I shall go and repair my bow and grab some arrows and we can follow you.
Excellent.
So she's going to the room to change into the hakama.
And that's what Chiaki's already wearing, because she's just been wearing clothes for traveling and not...
Rin's come back out where Daisuke is restringing his bow. She's wearing her hakama with the 2 swords. Again, she shuffles over to the table. So speaking of escape then, is there any way that the bandits could escape from the monastery?
There are 3 doors, and there are 4 of us.
Well, Rin signs that she's ready.
And... Oh, yep. As soon as Chiaki's gone and gotten her sword, she is ready to go.
While cold, the weather holds off being anything too horrendous. The journey itself takes about 45 minutes and is not altogether unpleasant. The going is not the easiest, but there is a path, and the foliage being winter is not too overgrown. At the end of the journey, the temple can be seen, a mix of stone and wood.
Keeping ourselves covered from view.
From the tree line you can see it is 150 feet from where you are to the next crop of trees, and beyond it is the temple.
I don't know if it would help determine where anybody is inside, but I am quite confident in my ability to go unnoticed in wooded areas. I could head around the building, see if anyone is outside or if I can spot or hear anyone.
Junosuke shrugs. I have to trust. If you say you can do it, then you can do it.
And Rin looks at Chiaki and tells you to keep safe. Signs to you to stay safe.
I will certainly do my best. You should do the same. And Chiaki is going to slip away into another section of the woods.
Alright, so Daisuke will draw his bow. Yep, so he knocks an arrow.
So actually, around 15 to 20 minutes since she left, she's going to come back and say, I haven't made it around the building yet, and I'm going to go continue looking, but I did just want to let you know the front door to the monastery, it's just through the patch of woods ahead. There are 2 guards there armed with spears. There is also one woman with a club who has been walking around the building, and it seemed like it took her about 10 minutes to fully circle it.
Whatever we do, we have 10 minutes.
One of the monks from inside brought a drink to the guards at the front, so at least they haven't killed everyone yet, although they certainly didn't treat him particularly gently. I'm going to go continue and see if there are other entrances that may be less guarded, but they're certainly keeping an eye on the front. And she will head off again.
Junosuke sits and chews on a piece of grass. He looks over to the building and he looks back. He sits there and he looks over at the building and he sighs. And he looks over at the building and he folds his arms.
Of course.
Junosuke looks over and he frowns. Then he squints. And then he leaps to his feet. And he turns and looks at Daisuke. I'm afraid your young friend has done something rather rash. And with that, he starts running for the temple.
Daisuke looks at the Ronin, confused. What do you mean? He gets up and he starts following.
As he runs for the crop of trees in front of the temple, he points. And you can see Chiaki is no longer scouting, but definitely going for the side door.
Not sticking in the tree line. She has broken through the tree line and headed off towards the building.
As he enters the crop of trees, he's not the most stealthiest of individuals, but then again, he's not trying to be. But what he does do is starting to use the trees as cover, moving from one to the next, trying to keep out of the line of sight to the front of the temple.
Daisuke will be doing the same thing, using the trees as cover, fluidly moving from one tree to the next to a brush as they're obviously talking to each other and they might be walking around, and Daisuke will use the time to, move and merge and blend in with the foliage.
There are two guards outside. They're not wearing armor, just simple traveling clothes. Both are armed with yaris with tantos in their sashes, and they are leaning against the front of the temple. They're talking quietly to each other.
So my opportunity from before, Aaron, was that Daisuke's managed to pull another arrow from his quiver, and he's got it in his mouth ready for quick draw. He looks behind him. His heart sinks as he realizes that Rin is not there.
Junosuke bends down and picks up a rock. He carefully aims and throws it across from him into the wood still. The two guards, startled, peer into the crop of trees. Hey, stop messing about! As he starts to move forward into the trees.
Daisuke draws and leans back behind the tree at the guard at the door. He's trying to fire without giving away his position. If the other guard's walking over towards the other area, the intention is to take out the guard on the left, so the guy on the right can't react immediately. So Daisuke leans backwards a little bit, just beyond keeping his top half of the body away from the tree, enough for the bow. Pulls back hard, leashes the arrow, and the arrow flies through the air, striking the guard at the door in the neck. The guard grasps at his neck and blood starts oozing down the front of him. He drops down to his knees and collapses sideways in front of the door, which is the disadvantage. Advantage I want to use to say that Daisuke was able to pop back and notch the arrow that he had in his mouth, so he's ready for his second shot if the other guy is warned. He might have heard something, I don't know. So
Junosuke breaks the tree line and he turns and starts running along the front of the temple. The guard that is in the trees cannot help but hear him. He turns round and sees his dead companion.
And this is where Daisuke will launch his second arrow. As Junosuke is running towards the other guy, and the guy hears his footsteps, being a large guy, heavy-setted. Even though he's trying to run quietly, it's still quite obvious through the grass. The guard turns around, Daisuke realized what he'd done wrong when Janusuke was like, "Oh, really?" Daisuke leans across the other side of around the other side of the tree in one fluid motion, bringing the bow up almost in a sideways shot with the arrow underneath the bow, flicks it, and the arrows hit him fair straight in the middle of the, almost in the middle of the back, and he falls to the ground, leaving Janusuke empty-handed.
So Janosuke goes close to the edge of the building, and then he kneels down on one knee and brings his katana close to him with the point aimed at the end of the building, and he's sitting there very still.
Daisuke will rush forward towards the door then.
Daisuke reaches the stairs, and it is that moment that a woman comes around the far side. She stands about 6'4". She has short cropped hair. She's wearing armor with no tunic. She's just showing her large muscles. Janosuke was waiting for her, and he lunges forward. She reacts quickly, parries, but the blade, instead of entering her chest, slides through a gap and hits her stomach. He rips it out and rolls back as the club swings over him and smashes the wood on the side of the temple. Blood is flowing freely, but she manages to hit Janosuke with the length of the club and, hefting him up, forces him to bounce off a tree with a grunt. He lands on his face and his katana falls from his grip. He scrambles under a downward strike which smashes into the ground, and as he scrambles forward, he slices at her leg with the tanto and leaves a deep cut.
So 3 success. Okay, so Daisuke aims and launches the arrow, and the arrow flies through the air and whistles, and as she turns, it strikes her.
The arrow hits her and she's staggered. This gives Janosuke just enough time to get to his feet, and he runs back and grabs his katana. She screams in rage and charges him. He ducks under the wild blow that would have destroyed him and lands a savage cut that cracks the armor and cuts through her chest. She spins around and staggers towards Daisuke, raising the club, refusing to die, until finally she crashes to the ground. Rin enters the building.
And it is a door that leads into a small room that has another door that would go into sort of the rest of the monastery. That door is closed though, right? Yes, okay. So the side door from outside leads into a small room, which is connected to the rest of the monastery by another door, but that door is currently closed. There are 3 people lying on the ground. One of them is an old man who have been rather badly beaten. His face is covered in bruises. 2 are what you assume were probably 2 of the bandits, who appear to have been almost hacked to pieces. They are covered in deep cuts. One of them has a cut on his neck so deep that his head is nearly detached from his body, and standing there with a katana covered in blood is Chiaki.
Interesting. All right. Rin looks up at Chiaki, looks down at the bodies on the floor, flicks her eyes around the room. She's got her sword drawn, her katana drawn, but she's holding it low towards the ground.
The old man who is beaten is not dead. He does seem to be unconscious.
Rin's eyes betray a hint of being impressed, but that is only momentary. And she looks around the room and slides over to the door to the rest of the monastery, and she puts her ear up against the door. Rin looks back at Chiaki again, looks down at the 3 guys on the floor, points to you and points down at the guys on the floor.
I, they beat him and I thought they might kill him.
Rin nods. She walks back to the old guy. Rin will slide open the door a little ways so that she can peer down the hallway.
You can hear the murmur of talking voices.
Okay, so Rin turns back to Chiaki, and she's like, waves her finger around in the air to follow.
All right. And she looks pretty nervous for someone who you assume has just rather handily, it appears, chopped two people up.
Door, where the two guys are talking. Taps on her right shoulder, and then she points to herself and then taps on the left shoulder. Slides the door open.
What could be an office? There is a desk off to one side. There is a shelf with scrolls on it. There is scripture scrolls hanging on the wall. There is a man about 45 to 50 dressed in a monk's abbot's attire. And behind him is a bandit who is holding a knife to his throat. And he's holding him tightly, and he's like, another step and he dies.
All right, Chiaki's definitely not taking a step.
Okay. Rin stops.
Tall, but not excessively tall. Not as big as the woman, which Rin has not seen.
Nope.
But Chiaki did. He's got a scar on his face. He's got hard eyes. He doesn't look incompetent.
Does he look leaderish?
It's hard to tell, but yeah, I mean,
That's
there's a
fair.
command quality about him.
Rin will bring her sword around the front, up on the side, drawing it up, and then guiding with her hand the point to the sheath and sliding her katana back in.
He's like, back up.
And Chiaki's looking to Rin to see what she's doing.
Rin looks behind her.
Chiaki sort of froze when he said not to move, but she's been looking sort of confused at the whole scene, actually. And she will sort of just, maybe, well, she's not sure. She's going to give it a shot anyway. She's going to slightly incline her head towards Rin and say, I don't actually believe he is a monk. His clothing is wrong, and he would be rather young to be an abbot. Based on what she has decided, she's determined, Chiaki is not taking a step back, and she never sheathed her sword, so she still has that. Chiaki will step forward.
The bandit shoves the abbot forward, and as the abbot staggers towards Chiaki, he pulls a dagger. He turns the tip towards her and crashes into her, the blade entering her shoulder. As the blow forces her to turn, it rips the dagger out of his hands.
Basically, I'm guessing whether it's because she's just been stabbed quite badly or for some other reason, any sort of ferocity or skill she seemed to have in dealing with the other two bandits that were killed is entirely gone, and she's just kind of gonna slash out sort of blindly at the guy who stabbed her. So yeah, have missed this bandit. If Rin had a moment of being impressed before, she certainly is not now.
So she's, taking a side stance with her hand still on the sword, and she's obviously prepared. She was prepared for any eventuation. She steps forward, swinging upwards, and rather than where he was swinging, now standing behind him, as he's looking in shock, and he just falls.
She actually looks slightly panicked, and I mean, it didn't work before, but she's not really sure what else to do other than try and hit this guy, so she's going to try and hit this guy. She is as surprised as anyone when one of her kind of wild slashes with the katana actually manages to connect with this bandit's throat, and he collapses to the ground, very quickly followed by her, as it turns out that waving one's arms around and slashing while bleeding heavily is not perhaps the best activity, and she has passed out as I have rolled a despair.
The world goes black for Chiaki. Sometime later, she opens her eyes and looks at the roof of the tavern.
And Rin's probably there in a meditative state next to her. Not asleep, but yeah.
And she will wake up and have that moment where when you wake up somewhere you didn't fall asleep, just disorientation and confusion. And she will...
And your shoulder's probably hurting.
Yeah, she will sit up, or try to at least. I don't know exactly how bad it is, but if she can, she will sit up.
And Rin's hand flashes out. She had them sitting in her lap, and her eyes are wide, and she's flashed her hand out onto Chiaki's forehead.
And she will look at Rin.
Rin's looking at Chiaki with a concern. She holds up her one hand and a thumb on her other hand.
6.
Her forefinger on the other hand.
6? 6 what? 6 days? That...
She nods.
Oh, well... I see I have caused a certain amount of trouble then. I am sorry.
She shakes her head.
Is everyone else all right?
She nods.
That's good. What happened?
She points at your wound, and she's like, oh, like as if the dawn of realization comes on her face, and she quietly gets up.
Wait, one moment. You didn't hear, you didn't hear whispering in the monastery, did you?
Rin's face looks a little bit confused. Her eyes sort of narrow, as if she's concerned. And she bends down and feels your forehead.
No, it's, if you didn't, then I know what it was.
Rin looks questioningly at you, but shakes her head and signs to you that she'll be back. And then she slides to the door, and with the grace of a crane, she glides out into the inn.
Chiaki wakes up because the room feels unusually cold, colder than it normally gets at night, and colder than she remembers it being when they came into the inn earlier that night. She spends a few minutes still lying on the futon, not wanting to get out from under the blanket because it is cold. But eventually she decides that somebody has probably left a window open, and that if she doesn't get up and close it, it's never going to get warmer, and she won't ever get any more sleep. So, very quietly, so as to not wake Rin up, she slips out of the futon and tiptoes across the tatami to the closest window. There is a little bit of moonlight coming in, enough to see very clearly that the window is not open, and neither is the other one across the room. And neither are either of the two doors, the one leading outside or the one leading into the inn, although it wouldn't really make sense for a draft to come from inside the inn anyway. She looks around, sort of puzzled, trying to work out where the chill is coming from, when she notices something else. The room is cold, but it's not just cold. There's something that feels magical. Something isn't natural about it.
And looking around the room, she notices what is definitely a shadow sitting on the far side of the room. In a kneeling position, there is a tuft of a ponytail that is tied tightly, and she can't make out any detail because the figure is definitely in that blackness, but she's silhouetted against the door of the paper on the lattice work on the door, and
but on the inside,
and Chiaki can see that outline. There is also very clearly visible on that silhouette a sword on the individual's back, with, it does not appear to be a round tsuba like the samurais, but a square one.
Okay.
And she cannot see hands, but she might assume that the individual is resting their hands on their knees.
She's going to just sort of stare, standing very still, not quite sure how to react. She doesn't know who it is. She doesn't know if she should wake Rin up or if that would cause a further issue. If this is indeed an issue, she basically has no idea what is happening and will stand there and just sort of hope things start to make sense.
And Chiaki can not hear any of the cicadas or any of the nightlife that she remembers normally hearing. There is an unusual sound, but it's definitely not natural, which you could assume is from whatever is the magic.
She, while still keeping her eyes on the figure because she's not sure what they're planning on doing, bends down next to Rin with the intention of waking her up, and has a slight moment of panic when she realizes that Rin does not appear to be breathing. However, she then also realizes that Rin isn't dead. That, combined with the lack of normal sounds and some sort of a strange sound that she's not sure about, that seems to be connected to whatever magic is going on, she is fairly certain that Rin is probably alright, but is not really going to be able to be woken at the moment. There's no point in attempting. It's not magic she's familiar with. If she had to guess, it could be connected to shadow magic, which isn't something she's familiar with at all. She mostly does air ring stuff. not anything like this. So, out of other options, she's going to approach the kneeling figure cautiously.
And the figure moves slightly. Chiaki can see, she thinks the hands come up and reaches possibly inside the tunic. Comes out with a small, about 2, maybe 3 inches. It's a wrapped thing of paper. The outcome was satisfactory. And she places the item in front of her for services rendered and pushes it towards you.
Thank you. And the response is more just sheer force of habit than actual gratitude, as she's not sure what this is, or, in this moment, what it is about at all, as she's not really thinking, what have I done in the past? No. She will pick it up.
And it is, in fact, paper that is wrapped nice and tight with something inside.
And she's going to look up at the figure to kind of see if they're doing anything, and if not, she will unwrap the paper.
And you look up, and the figure is not there. And you hear the window open. And in the moonlight, you can see that she is dressed all in black. She has long hair, which is tied into a ponytail at the top of her head. So the ponytail is coming up and then fans out like a waterfall, very free-flowing at the top of the ponytail. She has the ninja toe strapped to her back. And she is wearing a mask. You can only see the eyes and her hands. Everything else is covered. And when she turns and looks at you, you think she's smiling. It's hard to tell under the mask, but her eyes seem to be grinning a little bit. Because everything is so sort of dark around her, her eyes stand out really vividly, and they are a very bright purple. And then she's gone.
All right.
And as she goes, the sound changes in the room. It almost sounds like a breeze goes through. You hear the cicadas outside. And Rin sits up.
Chiaki is standing in the middle of the room. And she is holding paper. She's holding paper. The window is open.
Folds the blanket off.
But when she notices Rin getting up, she's actually going to turn and say, "Oh, okay. That's good. I thought you were just asleep. You were breathing, so that's good."
In the darkness, you can see Rin's face is really confused as she stops and she's just looking up at...
I don't even know how to explain because I'm not quite sure. Someone was here in the room, and while she was here, I think she slowed things down. At first, I didn't think you were breathing, but you weren't dead, so I wasn't sure.
And Rin stands, walks over to Chiaki, and stands close to her, sniffs the air, looks outside, looks back at Chiaki and down at the piece of paper in her hand.
She will kind of she'd unwrapped it to see what it is, so it's not currently wrapped up. So you can see that she's holding paper, and inside that paper is money. 5 cocoa, 5 years worth of rice. Well, I was still traveling on my way to meet you. I was asked for assistance with a problem. It was... There were 2 people who were missing, and I was asked to help find them. And I suppose I did. But the resolution was not very happy. I am told that this is my payment for that matter.
Rin shakes her head, and her eyebrows scrunch in as if she's not understanding a word you're saying. And she signs. You can see her hands flash about, asking you if you're okay.
I am. I was concerned when you didn't seem to be breathing, and well, it seems that as a result of the information I uncovered, there has been more death, and well, those that died were not particularly, shall we say, honorable? I'm still unsure how I feel about that.
So Rin walks over to the window, and the window's wide open, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Is there any footsteps on the ground outside?
Not that you can see.
In the snow?
Not that you can see.
Rin turns back to Chiaki, and she puts her thumb up with her forefinger out, and she pulls her forefinger towards her lips, asking, like, who?
Her name is Chizu. I had never spoken to her before now, but I had seen her previously. She was... I'm not quite sure how she was involved, to be truthful. When I was dealing with the Scorpion clan for this, she was there.
And as you're talking to Rin, she walks closer to Chiaki, and she's really close, and she grabs the edge of what would they wear? Like the edge of the folding of the shirt, and she pulls it open to look at the shoulder. Is there bandages still on there? And it doesn't look as though it's bleeding or anything like that?
Nope.
Interesting. Rin's really confused. And Adam's really confused, but Rin's even more confused because there's no one outside. She has gold in her hands.
Yeah. When I woke up, the window was open and everything was very quiet. Not naturally quiet. Everything was very still. You weren't breathing, but I did think you were alive. There was some sort of magic shadow magic, and it seemed like she slowed everything down. When she left, everything started back up again.
Rin turns back to the window and closes the window and makes sure it's locked. Rin turns and faces Chiaki again and walks closer to her with a smile on her face, and she has her hand open, she drags down over her face, saying, "Sleep," and then she just sort of taps the side of her head with both of her fingers to tell you, unpleasant dream.
I didn't have this money before. And, well, you don't have to believe me now, but it certainly sounds like very soon you may hear news of some deaths of prominent members of the Lion Clan and the Crane Clan.
When you said the Crane Clan, Rin's face becomes serious. And she signs who?
Of the Lions, Matsu Ino. From the Crane Clan, Kakita Hojin and Kakita Hachi, and also a scorpion woman, Shozuro Kujiko. Although she was dead before this, the others are more recent.
And as quickly as you say that, she rapidly signs, how do you know this?
She told me when she gave me the money. Because of what I found out, people were killed.
Rid's silent for a while, as if she's thinking. And she looks... initially she had a look of shock on her face. And then she signs that she needs to meditate on this.
I'm sorry.
It's worse than you think.
It is.
Oh God, because I'm thinking it's pretty bad.
Oh, well.
And it's worse?
Well, you might say that all those people who just got killed deserved it.
Yeah, but still...
The Legend of the Five Rings role-playing game is available from Edge Studios, starring RavenInsane as Rin, Emily as Chiaki, and Ghost as the Storyteller. Sounds and music were provided by Sirenscape and Nash Music Library. This has been a Critfail production. Thank you very much for listening.